The harsh reality and unfortunate truth of keeping reptiles, keeping chameleons, is that we will likely outlive our chameleons, which means we have to deal with the loss of losing them. A part of our family, a part of us, and it's not easy. And I don't think a lot of people talk about it. You'll see people posting about losing their chameleons and pets and things like that, but like, how do you actually deal with that? How do you move forward? And so I thought it was important that I talk about it. And so without further ado, let's get into it. So unfortunately, but I guess kind of fortunately, I have quite a bit of experience with grief. I've lost Apollo, one of my chameleons, about a year ago. I've lost cats, dogs, horses, and quite a few close to humans. Feels weird to say humans, but you know what I mean, like people in my immediate family, in my immediate circle, and you know, that sucks. But I'm hoping that through my own experiences, through my own grief journey, hopefully I can make sure that you feel seen and heard, and also hopefully give you some things that'll make you feel a little bit better on how you can navigate and move forward. So first things first, if you have already lost your chameleon, I just want to extend my deepest condolences and say, I'm sorry. This is a sucky situation, and I'm very aware that there's nothing I could say, anyone else can say, that will make this feel better. And people will say, you know, everything happens for a reason, or it wasn't your fault, and blah, blah, blah. But like, it still sucks. So I just want to acknowledge that, and I want you to feel seen and heard, and just know, like, I understand, I get it, and yeah, there's no way to make this better. Now, with death, with loss, with grief, with someone's passing, there's two types. One that is unexpected, usually traumatic, unforeseen loss, and then loss that you kind of saw coming. Maybe it's, you know, your animal got sick and you saw a lot of signs and symptoms, and then they ended up passing. Or this happens a lot with reptiles. One day they're totally fine, and the next day they've passed. And that's the harsh reality of reptiles. They do a really good job of hiding their sickness, hiding their illness in order to avoid being detected by predators, which means by the time we notice signs of being sick, it's most often too late. Not always, but in a lot of instances, there's not much we can do at that point because they're just so far gone. So I just want to acknowledge that both of those are sucky situations, but at least with the ones that you kind of see coming, hopefully there's something you can do to intervene. And if nothing else, it gives you a little bit of time to prepare yourself versus the unexpected loss. Obviously, you don't see that coming. So what do you do with the chameleon after they die? You have a couple options. You could bury them, you could cremate them. Some people do like wet specimen, or some sort of like preservation where you can like display the bones. I personally had a necropsy done with Apollo when he passed, which is like an animal autopsy, so they can help determine the cause of death. Sometimes they can figure it out, sometimes they can't, but I opted to do that, so then they were able to cremate him and everything else after that. I don't have his body. I had no desire. Personally, I didn't want ashes to deal with, and I didn't want to bury him, so my way of honoring him was to get a little paw print made in a little clay thing that you could like bake, and then I also have a beautiful, gorgeous print of him that I have in my home. And so for me, that's how I feel comfortable honoring Apollo and his memory. But everyone does things differently, but that's what I chose to do. So if that's something that you would be interested in and your chameleon's still alive, maybe there's things that you could do now to honor their memory. So maybe you can get like beautiful pictures done. I took all of mine with my phone, to be clear. This is not like a hired professional. Or if your chameleon's comfortable being handled, maybe a little paw print, maybe you guys get a portrait together, you know, a cute little selfie, like whatever it is that you think will help you honor their memory, I would recommend doing that. So some things that no one really talks about is kind of the routine and behaviors that come with having reptiles and then losing them. By that, I mean Apollo's enclosure was empty for months, and I'm in the habit of going 1, 2, 3, checking on all 3 of my chameleons. Neptune, Luna, Apollo, Neptune, Luna, Apollo. Multiple times a day, I come into this room, first thing in the morning, last thing before I go to bed. I am constantly just like checking in, saying hi to everyone, making sure everyone's good. I know all their favorite spots. I know all their sleeping spots. So that was really hard when I lost Apollo, was to go Neptune, Luna, oh, Neptune, Luna, oh. And it was just that kind of constant reminder that Apollo wasn't there, and looking at his favorite branch and not seeing him there was really, really hard. But instead of just ignoring it or, pretending that it's not there, like, you kind of have to feel the feelings. You kind of have to force yourself through the motions in order to move forward. And again, everyone processes grief and loss differently. This is just how I did it. I left his enclosure untouched for a couple of months, and then once I felt ready, then I, broke down his whole enclosure, removed all the branches, everything else, got rid of his enclosure, and like did what I needed to do with all that. So, but it took me a couple months, but eventually, like, we need to move forward. And I think it's really healthy for us to kind of process that. I know some people will kind of drape the enclosure, especially if you only have one. When you're ready, then you can look at it, deal with it, but then you don't have that constant reminder of an empty enclosure, and I totally get that. If you do decide to use the same enclosure and get a new chameleon, I highly encourage you to deeply sanitize it. I'm not just talking like a little scrub-a-dub-dub, I'm talking like bleach the works, and there's a great blog on the chameleon forums on how to like deep clean and sanitize an enclosure. And if you're not sure what the cause of death was for your chameleon, I would highly encourage you to do that before bringing a new chameleon home into that same enclosure, just so they're not exposed to anything that could potentially be harmful on there. Now, the thing with chameleons, sometimes it's something that we did. And if that's the case, then we need to take full responsibility for things that we could have done differently, make any necessary changes, and move forward. Now, there are also instances where you did everything right. You could have done, you did everything that you could, and they still ended up, getting sick and passing away. But in the instance where maybe your care wasn't correct, you cut corners, purchased a sick animal, whatever the case may be, make sure you're taking that responsibility and making any necessary changes. But like I said, we can do everything right, and it's still not enough, and they still end up passing away. So what you can do is get a necropsy done to see, potentially what the cause of death is. Get your enclosure reviewed, get your husbandry reviewed, lean on people's expertise and experience to make sure that your care is picture perfect. The margin for error for chameleons is very small, and by that I mean the wiggle room for getting things wrong is very small. So if you don't have the proper UVB, proper supplements, proper enclosure, etc., then odds are your chameleon will get sick and it is fatal. Now, you might think like, oh, I'll get that when they're older, or, during my, next opportunity. I'm like, no, like they need it now. So make sure that you're not cutting corners, and moving forward, you're making sure everything is good to go. So this is the first time that you're losing something near and dear to you. It can be hard to find people who understand. People are usually understanding of losing a cat or a dog and see them as family members. But I remember when I had to rush Apollo to the emergency vet, he ended up passing away. Like, it was a random weekday. Like, I had work, right? So I had to ping my boss, ping my team, and I was like, hey, like, I need to take the day off. Like, this is what happened, blah, blah, blah. And like, they thought it was my dog. And I was like, no, actually it's my chameleon. And you could just see like the level of understanding wasn't quite at the level of what it would have been if it was my dog. And I think a lot of people see reptiles and chameleons as less than, unfortunately, and don't truly understand the relationship and bond that we have with them, and the amount of love and care that we pour into them, even though it's not always received. And reptiles are kind of seen sometimes as this taboo pet, and people try to equivalate the loss of your chameleon to the loss of like the goldfish that you won at the state fair that lived for 2 days. It's like, no, like, this was a big part of my family, and this is a much bigger loss than some people make it out to be. So if your parents maybe don't understand, your coworkers, your loved ones, your friends, like they like, oh, sorry, and like brush it off. Like, I just want you to know, like, I understand and I get it, and I know it's really hard, and I know it's a big part of you. And so I just want you to know that like I see you and I feel you and I understand, even if those around you don't. I hope that you can find some solace in community, maybe here in the comment section or on the chameleon forums. Like, that is a great community, and like they will give you a nice virtual hug. So some things that you could do proactively, right, before your chameleon passes away, is make sure you find an exotic vet, an emergency vet in your area that you feel comfortable with. So if and when your chameleon is showing signs of sickness, that you already have somewhere you trust and can go to. That being said, make sure you learn the signs of a sick chameleon. I do have an entire video. It's like 25 signs of a sick chameleon. I would familiarize yourself with that, because by the time, again, they're showing those signs, they've been sick or have some underlying health issues for some time already. So familiarize yourself with that, and then also get your enclosure and everything reviewed by an expert, whether that be with me and you book a video call with me. I do offer those to anyone who's interested in booking one. Also on chameleonforms.com, they do enclosure reviews over there and will give you detailed feedback as well. So you have options, and I highly encourage you, if you haven't already, to get your enclosure and care reviewed by someone that you trust, to make sure you are, at least the things that you can control, are good to go. And this may sound a bit morbid, but I had this immense fear of like finding my chameleons dead on the floor and like what that would look like. So to try and like desensitize myself, I actually looked up pictures of dead chameleons on the Chameleon forums, only so that my brain would kind of understand and know what to expect of what a dead chameleon looks like. So like you have sunken in eyes, they'll be very rigid, bones, their limbs, there we go, limbs will be very rigid, they'll be a different color, usually a lighter color or a darker color, they kind of go one way or the other, and odds are they'll end up on the floor of the enclosure because they won't be able to hold onto the branch, and then they will fall when they pass. Luckily, I didn't find Apollo like that. I did end up taking him to the emergency vet, and he ended up being euthanized in the process. So I did see him, and was there for him on his way out, but didn't have the startling experience of waking up one day and finding my chameleon on the floor. But that is a very real possibility. So like I personally wanted to kind of desensitize myself a little bit and kind of prepare myself for what to expect. So I might be crazy for doing that, but that made me feel a little better. So maybe it'll help one of you as well. But normally I would say if you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. But this is obviously a kind of sad topic. But if you found this information helpful, then I guess feel free to give the video a thumbs up. As always, you can leave any questions or comments down below, and feel free to book a video call with me, like I said, to review your enclosure. That is always an option for you guys. Otherwise, feel free to subscribe so you know I post a new video. You can follow Neptune and all my chameleons on social media at Neptune the Chameleon. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye. You do this, and then I just put you back. All right, you gotta go back in. No, not up my arm.